Okay. This is Melissa Greene coming to you once again. And I'm talking about uh, this big grassy area. On this big grassy area on the corner of Delmar and Pendleton were two houses. Well, two buildings. The corner building was an old funeral home that was converted into the Holy Temple Church of God in Christ. And next door to that funeral home, I don't know what type of house to call it, but it was turned basically into an apartment building. In the Holy Temple Church of God in Christ, it was started by Percy Phillips. And when he first started, he was by himself. His wife wasn't allowed to leave her church, and come, but that's a long story that we don't have time for. But the Holy Temple Church of God in Christ was important to this area because Delmar and Pendleton area was also known as the stroll. And many prostitutes came up and down Delmar and Pendleton. And we're going to have to backtrack because I forgot about that house over there on the other side is where the prostitutes would take their johns. I told you about that before. I just forgot. And in this church, in 1977, my mother she came here. My mother and father divorced. They got a divorce, I guess, like in the early 70s. And she met a girl. She was working for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and she met this lady at work, and she convinced her to go out. You need to get over that man and all that kind of stuff. Blah 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 blah. Come on, let's go out with me. And then my mother met a pimp, and don't laugh. The pimp's name was Jimmy Mack. And for all people with gray hairs, we know that there was a song sung by some of the female black artists group, Jimmy Mack. Jimmy Mack, when are you coming back? Well, story is said that that song was about him, and he was a well-known pimp. My mother was a greenhorn. She was married out of my grandparents' home, and she ended up down here on the stroll. She was on the stroll for 3 years down here. Before she got down here, she was further out, but anyway. By the time she got down here, she had really been worked over and beat up pretty much. As a child, I used to help my mother fight her pimps. My mother would fuss at me about watching the Three Stooges while she was rolling up a joint. And I remember I remember that stuff so vividly. I mean, I'm seeing it in my eyes now. And so she would walk up and down this street, Delmar and Pendleton, from like where that truck is down there to down here, right past Galilee Baptist Church that's been there forever. And she'd pick up John's, and before she found out about the church, my father had an investigator film her because his thing was he was about to come and take her to court and declare her an unfit mother. Well, just so happened, the church put loudspeakers outside, and the pimps would come by and bust the loudspeakers out of the window. And my mother, and then in the olden days, the church people, the way they grew their congregation was they'd knock on your door and say, come visit my church, or either they meet you on the street and say, come visit my church. Well, with tons of prostitutes walking up and down the street, there'd be groups of people from the Holy Temple that would go out and witness. And one day, Jerry Brookfield, Ola Roby, Juanita Shields, they all are passed on. They witnessed to my mother and told her, aren't you tired of being beat by that man and being used and so on and so forth? Don't you want to, have your own? And she was so deep into prostitution, she couldn't come out. And by then, my father had taken me. And that's why I say I lived way out. I lived out in Florissant in a time where there was farmland. Now it's houses everywhere. But when we moved out there in the 70s, it was a farmland. So my mother came to this church in June of 1977. And above the church, there were rooms. There was the Crawford family, a man with the last name of Lucas, a man with the last name of Harvey, and in a room about 3 times the size of this car, because there was only a twin bed in there, a 3-drawer dresser. It was a corner. It was shaped like a corner with the curve. They gave my mother a room because she was running for her life. You know, you come off the stroll, you pimp on his money, and blah, 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 blah. She got saved in that church, and I didn't know what saved was. You know, all my friends were white. You know, back then I graduated from McClure North, and so I never forget when she called me and told me, you know, that she had gotten saved. And so I went to school and I told the counselor, my mother got saved off the stroll, and she's not smoking dope no more, blah, 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 blah. And so I was so excited. And so because I was telling my mom, do some everything. Well, through her meeting Jesus in this church, it's no longer there. She stopped selling her body. She stopped doing drugs. I mean, her whole life changed. I mean, my mother, whatever you see, I think they're called sensation movies, where you see like Superfly and the women got these short skirts on and big old bubble earrings and huge wigs and crazy makeup and these big old tall platform boots. That's how my mother dressed. Exactly like that. And when I went to school, the school called my father. I got in so much trouble. I was in the 2nd grade. I got in so much trouble about that because I had told these strangers, you know, these prestigious people, you know, my mother had been on the stroll and now she was saved. They didn't, you know. Anyway, so over the due process of time, when she started working, because she was a school teacher, she graduated from Washington University. She started off at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then she went to school to WashU. She became a school teacher in the St. Louis public school system. And so she had a little bit of money. She moved to the next lot, which was a house. And the first floor were the Brookfields. The second floor, and they had like 6, 7, 8 kids. They had a lot of kids. Down in the basement, I think, were the Johnsons. They had a lot of kids. Then the McKenzies were up on the 2nd floor. And then up on the 3rd floor, my mother had a humongous room with her own kitchen. And then there were 2 more little apartments up there. But, of course, you know, they had to share the plumbing, the bathroom, and everything. But my mother had moved over because she had more money now. And see, the thing about Percy Phillips was he would give you a leg up so that you wouldn't have to go back out there. I mean, that second house were ex-pimps, ex-drug dealers, you know, the whole 9. Because that's what was going on. We were talking about the Gaslight Square and the seediness of the Gaslight Square. They knew all about that. You know, they lived it. And so, you know, it just so happened that they all heard about this one church. And through this one church, a lot of lives were changed and a lot of lives were saved. And over the due process of time, as with the four row house back there, everybody who moved into the Holy Temple or one of the properties that he owned eventually moved out in the county with their own houses. And at the Holy Temple, back in the day, everybody had on white shirts, you know, because, you know, and I tell people this, and I'm not trying to talk, you know, like I'm so big or whatever, but I didn't know about food stamps. I didn't know about welfare. I didn't know about any of that except for, you know, you see the movie Claudine on TV with James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll. So I've met a different type of people, and they were the happiest people on the top side of the earth. And this church grew so fast. They had church 7 days a week. They had church 7 days a week. And so my pastor and I, we were talking, and he said, this way they would have a mind on the Lord instead of going back. Because, I mean, these people were street people, dope fiends. You know, I mean, whatever you see on TV that people are doing as far as the seediness of the world. That's the type of people that came through the Holy Temple, and lives were completely changed and were able to build and go on. So we can be done about that because I don't want to cry. But I was telling you about the scar on my eye. And so one year, I'll never forget, my stepmother bought us all house shoes because we didn't get toys because my father adopted my cousins. Their parents were both killed. And so right over there where that pole is, where this light pole is right there, there was an opening that went to the basement of the church. And every Sunday after church, because sometimes people didn't have any food to eat, he'd have a full Sunday morning Thanksgiving dinner every Sunday after church. And so we were here on the weekends. And I'll never forget, my stepmother told me, don't play with those house shoes outside. Well, you know, what do you do when your parents say don't? You do. And so we were jumping and playing. And so the kids the opening to the basement were two brick walls. Those big old bricks with the holes in the middle. And so they were the two brick walls. And then the back where the school is, right this way was the baptismal pool. And I went to jump, and everybody was jumping over, leap, ah ha ha ha, leap, ah ha ha. And I leaped and fell straight down the middle. And now that it's daytime, can you see?
Barely.
Well, I have too, because I'm clumsy. But anyway, I fell down there, and I fell on some glass, and the Lord bless, it just missed my eye. It just, over the years, whatever. But anyway, that's one of the main memories I remember as a child, is falling down there and just cutting my eye wide open. My eyelid, it just missed my eyeball, or socket. So that was great. Okay.